The snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, turning the Granite Bluff Range into a monochrome wilderness. The wind howled like a banshee across the jagged cliffs, and every gust sent icy needles into the face of Tom Cassidy, lone rancher of the Dry Creek Cattle Range. His horse, a lean sorrel mare named Ginger, pawed nervously at the snow, her breath steaming in clouds. Tom's eyes narrowed against the storm as he struggled to guide the animal along the barely visible trail. He had been tracking a stray herd bull that had wandered toward the northern cliffs, a dangerous route even in calm weather. Today, it was a gamble he might not survive. The snow beneath him groaned and shifted, a warning that went unheeded. One misstep, a hidden slope giving way, and it happened in an instant. The ground trembled, a low rumble beneath Tom's feet. His mare snorted and bolted sideways, but he didn't have time to pull her back. The snow and loose gravel gave way beneath him, sending him tumbling down a slope. He tried to grab a tree branch, his hands numbed by the cold, but it was futile. The earth and snow swallowed him waist-deep, and a jagged boulder pinned his leg against the slope. Panic surged as he struggled to free himself, teeth chattering and fingers numb. Then came the sound of hooves, pounding through the snow like thunder. A shape loomed above him, massive, terrifying, and yet somehow comforting. It was a woman, towering and statuesque, with hair the color of pale wheat. Her coat of furs and thick wool trousers stretched over a powerful frame that could have been sculpted from stone. Behind her, a mountain stallion, muscles rippling under a glossy chestnut coat, pawed at the snow impatiently. With hands that seemed capable of moving boulders, and perhaps she would, she waded into the snow and hauled Tom free. He gasped as he was pulled upright, his legs trembling beneath him. Thank you," he stammered, snow clinging to his beard and eyelashes. "Easy, cowboy," she said, her voice a blend of warmth and authority. "You're lucky the snow didn't bury you completely. That would have been the end of it." He looked up at her, taking in the sheer strength in her frame, the sharp intelligence in her blue eyes. Who are you?" "Name's Eliza Brannigan," she said. "I run the homestead up on the cliff. You're welcome to ride with me. I've got a fire and hot stew waiting if you can manage to keep your legs under you." Tom nodded numbly, feeling both awe and relief. Ginger, his mare, had disappeared somewhere downslope in the snowstorm, and he had no choice but to trust this mysterious woman. She gestured to her stallion, and the animal knelt slightly so Tom could climb onto its back behind her. The sheer size of the beast was astonishing. Every step was a deliberate shove against the deep snow, muscles working in perfect harmony with its rider. The homestead came into view after what felt like hours, though the storm's whiteout made judging distance impossible. Perched on a cliffside ledge, the wooden house was simple but sturdy, with smoke curling from the stone chimney. A barn leaned slightly to one side, its roof buckled from last winter's snows, but otherwise, it looked strong, ready to withstand another season of harsh storms. Inside, the cabin was warm, filled with the scent of pine, wood smoke, and something hearty cooking over the hearth. Eliza guided him to a chair near the fire, and Tom sank gratefully into it, letting the heat seep into his frozen limbs. She handed him a mug of broth that was so hot it almost burned his lips but did more than any blanket to thaw him. "You're lucky," she said softly. "Most men caught in that snowslip don't make it this far." Tom shook his head, still trying to gather himself. I thought I was a goner. Thank God for you. How can a woman be that strong?" Eliza smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and sorrow in her expression. "Strength comes in different forms. I've had to be strong my whole life. My husband, he used to say I could move mountains if I set my mind to it." Her gaze darkened slightly. "Before the fire took him, and our dreams of a family, I did what I had to do to survive." Tom felt the weight of her words. He knew loss. He'd buried a brother to fever, watched his parents die of illness and neglect. But something in the way she spoke, the quiet steadiness of her presence, made him feel that perhaps there was a chance to rebuild, even in the harshest of landscapes. Over the next days, Tom's body began to recover, his bruises fading and his frostbite slowly receding. But his spirit remained raw, unsettled by the storm and the near-death experience. Eliza stayed close, her hands always ready to help, her words gentle but firm. And though the air between them was thick with unspoken tension, A certain warmth began to creep into their interactions. Small smiles, shared work, moments of quiet understanding by the hearth. One morning, as the snow finally eased to a light flurry, Tom stepped outside to inspect the barn. The damage was worse than he had imagined. Part of the roof had caved in, and the side wall leaned precariously. He turned to Eliza. "Looks like you could use a hand," he said, trying to mask the nervous excitement he felt at the thought of working alongside her. She raised an eyebrow, the corners of her lips tugging upward. "You think you can handle it? You've been laid up for days." "I've been healing," he said, shrugging. "And I can't let a strong woman like you do all this alone." Eliza laughed, a rich, melodic sound that made Tom's chest tighten unexpectedly. "All right, then. You're on roof duty. I'll handle the heavy beams." And so they worked. Tom held nails and beams, passed boards and tools, and watched in awe as Eliza moved boulders and lifted lumber with astonishing ease. Her movements were precise, almost effortless, though he knew the strength it required. And as they labored together under the thin sun, brushing snow off the beams, he felt a bond growing, not just of necessity, but of something deeper, something tender that neither of them could yet name. At night, they shared the hearth again, elbows brushing as they passed tools, laughter echoing softly in the small cabin. Eliza told him stories of the bluff, of winters past and summers long gone, of a life she had once dreamed of before tragedy struck. And Tom, in turn, shared his own memories, the quiet loneliness of a rancher who had never stayed in one place long enough to make roots. The snow continued to fall, painting the cliffs in white, but inside, warmth grew, not just from the fire, but from two hearts, battered by loss and hardship, slowly finding a rhythm together. The barn would be repaired, the horses fed, and the snow would eventually melt. But in that remote, wind-swept corner of Granite Bluff, amidst frost and stone, a connection had begun, one that neither snow nor storm could undo. The days blurred together in the quiet rhythm of survival. Tom and Eliza worked from dawn to dusk, repairing the barn, stacking firewood, and tending to the few surviving cattle that had braved the snowstorm. The cold still bit at their fingers, but the fire in the cabin offered a reprieve that made the effort worthwhile. Eliza's strength never ceased to amaze Tom. She lifted beams and boulders with the ease of someone moving furniture in a room. Yet it wasn't just her physical power that impressed him. She had a patience and steadiness that balanced the wildness of the mountains themselves. When he faltered or hesitated, she guided him with a gentle firmness, never condescending, always present. One afternoon, as the sun attempted to pierce the overcast sky, they stood at the partially rebuilt barn, their hands streaked with sawdust and sweat. "You've got a good arm for hammering," Eliza said, squinting against the weak sun. "Most men your size couldn't hold the beams steady like that." Tom wiped the sweat from his brow, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "I might have learned a thing or two from tracking stray cattle across the worst terrain you've ever seen." He paused, his gaze drifting to the cliff edge below. "But I still can't match you." She laughed, a soft sound that carried across the snow-laden field. "I never claimed to be average. Life tends to make you stronger when it takes away everything you thought you wanted." The words hung in the air, weighted with unspoken sorrow. Tom glanced at her, noticing the flicker of pain in her pale blue eyes. He wanted to ask her about the man she had lost, the family she had dreamed of, but something told him she would share it in her own time. That evening, after the barn roof had been reinforced and the walls straightened, they returned to the cabin, muscles aching but spirits lifted. Eliza guided him to the hearth, where a pot of stew simmered. The smell of browned meat and root vegetables made Tom's stomach growl despite the chill that clung to him. "You've been pushing yourself," she said, ladling broth into a wooden bowl. "Eat. You need strength if you're going to keep up with me tomorrow." "I don't mind keeping up," he said, meeting her gaze with a faint, teasing smile. "I just might be slower at keeping my balance on a roof." She rolled her eyes but smiled back. "You'll do fine. Just remember to watch where you step." They ate in companionable silence, the fire crackling between them, warmth seeping into Tom's bones. And yet, in that silence, a subtle tension lingered, an unspoken recognition that their bond was changing. Tom felt it in the way his hand brushed hers while passing the ladle, in the way her eyes lingered on him longer than necessary, and in the quiet moments when words seemed superfluous. After the meal, they lingered near the fire. Eliza pulled a blanket over her shoulders, and Tom, feeling a boldness he hadn't expected, sat closer than he normally would have. The wind whistled outside, rattling the cabin's shutters, but inside, the fire, and the closeness of another human, made the cold seem distant. "You know," Tom said softly, "I've been through storms before, but none like this. None that made me feel alive again." He paused, then added, "It's the work, maybe. Or maybe it's you." Eliza's eyes softened, the hint of a smile playing at her lips. "You don't know how long I've gone without hearing words like that," she said. "After the fire. After he was gone. I didn't think I'd ever feel alive again, either." The words struck a chord deep in Tom's chest. He reached out slowly, covering her hand with his. She didn't pull away. Instead, she allowed the warmth of his touch to rest against hers, and for a moment they simply sat, letting the firelight play across their faces. Days turned into weeks. The snow began to thaw, revealing patches of brown grass and jagged rocks beneath. The cattle had been rounded up and sheltered, the barn repaired to withstand the remainder of the winter, and the homestead, once isolated and battered, had begun to feel like a home again. During one of their work sessions outside, Tom paused to catch his breath, glancing at the view below. Granite bluffs stretched endlessly, the cliffs carved and jagged, a reminder of both nature's brutality and its majesty. Eliza approached, carrying a bundle of nails and small boards. "You're staring like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders." "I'm thinking," he said slowly, "that this place, it's like you. Strong, unyielding, but maybe needing someone to help hold it together." She raised an eyebrow, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Are you trying to be poetic, Cassidy?" "Maybe," he admitted. "Or maybe I just mean what I say. You've built this place up from nothing, and it's remarkable." She smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made Tom's chest ache. "Well, you've helped. I won't forget that." That night, the wind was calm, and the stars shone brightly above the bluff. Tom and Eliza stood outside the cabin, wrapped in blankets, watching the sky. The mountain stallion pawed the ground nearby, stamping away the chill of the evening. "I never thought I'd find someone again," Eliza said quietly, "not after losing everything." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight from the cabin behind them. "But maybe life has a way of surprising us." Tom reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I don't plan on going anywhere," he said. "Not now, not ever." A gust of wind swept through the bluff, scattering snowflakes that sparkled like tiny diamonds in the starlight. And in that moment, standing side by side with the woman who had saved his life, Tom felt something he hadn't in years: hope. Not just for survival, but for something more, a connection that could withstand storms, snow slips, and the weight of the past. Eliza leaned slightly against him, a quiet trust in her gesture, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future. Perhaps not the one she had dreamed of before tragedy, but a new one, built slowly with care in the snowbound wilderness of Granite Bluff. And as the night deepened, the warmth between them solidified, silent yet undeniable. Two hearts, battered and broken, were slowly mending together, finding strength not just in survival, but in the quiet companionship of shared work, shared stories, and the gentle power of human touch. The days grew longer, the sun climbing higher in the sky, melting away the last stubborn drifts clinging to the Granite Bluff slopes. Tom and Eliza spent more time outside, their work lighter now that the barn was repaired and the cattle secured. The muscles in their arms and backs still ached from weeks of labor, but there was a satisfaction in the kind of fatigue that came from building something real, something lasting. One afternoon, Tom was stacking firewood near the barn when he noticed Eliza silhouetted against the snowy cliff, her hair shining in the sun like spun gold. She was moving with effortless power, lifting planks and arranging beams with precision, a woman who seemed carved from the mountains themselves. He watched her for a long moment, feeling a swell of admiration that went deeper than physical awe. "Eliza!" he called. She turned, brushing snow off her trousers and smiling. "Come see this." He gestured to a section of the barn that still needed reinforcing. "I think I figured a way to make it stronger, so it won't even bend in a storm like the last one." She walked over, placing her hands on her hips, her eyes scanning his work. Not bad, Cassidy. You're learning. Her voice carried both praise and a playful challenge. But you're going to have to keep up if we're going to get it right. He grinned, setting down the last log. I plan on it. You're not the only one getting stronger out here. They worked side by side, carrying beams, hammering nails, and occasionally laughing when a clumsy slip in the snow caused them to stumble into one another. Every glance and touch carried an unspoken understanding, something more than friendship, more than mere companionship. It was a bond forged in survival, in shared toil, and in the quiet intimacy of a remote life. That evening, as the last streaks of sunlight painted the bluff in shades of pink and orange, they sat on the cabin steps, watching the horizon. The wind was calm, carrying only the faint scent of pine and melting snow. I never thought I'd feel this, Eliza said softly, her voice almost lost in the evening air. She looked at Tom, and for a moment, the usual confidence that cloaked her seemed to give way to something more vulnerable. After everything, I didn't think I'd ever trust someone with my heart again. Tom reached for her hand, holding it gently but firmly. You've already trusted me once, he said. Out there, in the snow. I wouldn't let you down then, and I won't now. She studied him for a moment, the wind tousling her hair. Then, slowly, she leaned her head on his shoulder. It was a small gesture, but in it was the weight of all her past sorrows and the tentative hope of something new. Tom shifted slightly, letting her rest, feeling a warmth spread through him that no fire could replicate. The mountain stallion came up behind them, snorting softly, and nuzzled Eliza's shoulder. She laughed, brushing her hand through the horse's mane. Even old thunder agrees with you, she said. You belong here, Tom. He smiled, watching the sunset reflect in the horse's dark eyes. I think I belong with you, Eliza. Not just here, but here with you. For a long moment, the three of them, man, woman, and mountain stallion, stood together on the bluff, a small family of sorts, forged not by blood but by survival, respect, and shared strength. Winter was retreating, leaving the granite bluff cliffs more exposed and dangerous, but the homestead stood strong. The barn was repaired, ready for spring, and the cabin had warmth not just from the hearth but from the companionship it now sheltered. The storm that had nearly claimed Tom's life had also brought him to something he had never expected, a second chance at connection, at trust, at love. A week later, as they tended the last of the cattle along the thawing slope, Tom paused to look at the cliffs. You know, he said, I never imagined I'd be happy in a place like this. But, with you, it feels like home. Eliza's eyes softened, and she reached out, brushing snow from his shoulder. Home isn't about walls or a roof, she said. It's about the people you share it with. You're part of this place now, Tom. I'm glad you are. He took her hand, holding it as they surveyed the land together. The snow had melted enough to reveal the hard, jagged rock beneath, proof that the bluff would be challenging as always. But with Eliza at his side, it no longer felt impossible. The mountain stallion pawed at the ground, snorting in impatience. Time to move, Thunder, Eliza said, smiling. She mounted the massive animal, Tom climbing up behind her. The bluff stretched endlessly before them, dangerous and beautiful, but no longer lonely. As they rode together across the ridge, the wind whipping past them, there was a sense of completion, of beginnings entwined with endings. Tom thought of the snow-slip that had nearly killed him, of the fear and cold and isolation. And now, with Eliza guiding him, he felt alive, not just surviving, but ready for whatever seasons might come. They returned to the cabin that night, the first night free from the shadows of winter storms. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, and the repaired barn gleamed in the starlight beyond the windows. They sat together, side by side, hands entwined, knowing that the hardships they had endured had led them to this: trust, warmth, and a promise of shared tomorrows. Eliza tilted her head, her golden hair catching the firelight. Do you think maybe we could have more than this? A family, someday. Tom smiled, a quiet certainty settling in his chest. We'll take it one step at a time, he said. But yes, with you, I think anything is possible. She leaned against him, and for the first time since the tragedy that had taken her husband and dreams, she allowed herself to imagine a future. Not one of what was lost, but of what could be built together. Strong, enduring, and beautiful, like the cliffs of Granite Bluff themselves. Outside, the mountain night settled over the bluff, serene and still. The snow that remained glistened like a blanket of stars, and the wind whispered softly through the pines. Inside the cabin, two hearts, battered by loss and hardship, had found warmth and each other. And as the fire's glow cast flickering shadows on the walls, there was a sense of peace, of survival, and of a love that had taken root in the most unlikely of places. The avalanche bride of Granite Bluff was no longer just a legend of survival. She was a woman who had endured loss and emerged stronger, now with a companion who had proven his own courage, loyalty, and heart. Together, they faced the mountains, the storms, and the promise of tomorrow, united, unyielding, and full of hope. And in the quiet of that cliffside homestead, with the stallion resting outside and the last embers of the fire glowing softly, Tom and Eliza allowed themselves to dream, not of what was lost, but of what was yet to come.